Good afternoon to this afternoon's evening's program on refugee rights are human rights. We have in our midst one of the best resource persons we can have for a session of this sort, Dr. Paul Newman. I will read out a portion of his formal resume and then give you a detailed information about him. Dr. Paul Newman is a professor from Bangalore, teaching in one of the universities in Bangalore, specializing in conflicts, right to self-determination, refugee studies, and human rights issues. The academics need to note this: specializing in conflicts, right to self-determination, refugee studies, and human rights issues. It's very difficult to get an academic saying this on his CV. He was one of the 4 public speakers at the Permanent People's Tribunal on Sri Lanka, held in Dublin a few years ago. He regularly attends the UN Human Rights Council at Geneva, championing the cause of nations fighting for self-determination. In August 2018, he addressed the first Yazidi Genocide Conference. In 2019, he was one of the international observers on the Catalonian referendum case at the Supreme Court of Spain. Paul Newman is from Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. Paul Newman has finished his doctoral studies on issues related to Sri Lanka. I would allow him to say what it is himself. Paul Newman started his career not with his PhD, not with his studies in refugee rights, but he worked as a volunteer, and spent more hours in a day working as a volunteer than teaching in St. Joseph's College, where he was those days, with the Jesuit Refugee Service. He has walked in and walked out of every refugee camp that you can think of in Tamil Nadu. He knows the northern part of Sri Lanka inch by inch. He has visited Sri Lanka several times and has been a person who's extremely knowledgeable, not only theoretically, not only politically, but very, very emotionally with the families of refugees. Thank you very much, Paul, for accepting to be with us. It gives us great courage that you are with us, because we would need now to understand how refugee rights are also human rights, and what's happened to a number of people here whom we think are refugees, but our governments call them otherwise. They no longer technically call them refugees. They call them something else. I will leave it to you to clarify. Thank you very much for being here. There are over 24% academicians here who need to understand that following this kind of a slant in profession is really bringing you dignity and also a lot of peace. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Anil, for the wonderful introduction. And without wasting much time, I directly go into the topic. So when we first come across this word, refugee, many of you would be startled to see what is this, who is a refugee, and why we should be hosting refugees. And the word itself looks extremely alien to many of us. So first, to go by the legal definition given out by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or the UNHCR. The UNHCR defines refugee as a person forced to flee his or her country for the fear of persecution because of 5 reasons. Reason number 1, that is race. The second one, religion. The third one, nationality. The fourth one, your political opinion. The fifth one is membership of a particular social group. So these are the 5 criteria by which the UNHCR judges a person, whether the person is eligible to become a refugee or not. So this is as per the 1951 UN Convention, and that was the time wherein we had the what we call as the Cold War, the onset of the Cold War. Many people from the communist bloc were crossing over to the capitalist bloc from East Germany to West Germany and vice versa, in the sense from the Soviet bloc to the capitalist bloc. So that is the time this definition was framed. So this definition was not acceptable to many people across the globe. For example, the African Union doesn't accept this definition because here this definition doesn't address the group requirement. It only speaks of persons, individuals. So when people move out in groups, this definition doesn't become effective. So the African Union and then the Latin American group known as the Cartagena Declaration, they have their own definitions to define what a refugee is or who a refugee is. So from there, to move over, let me begin with the Indian part of the story. To begin with, I would like to begin with a case study of a few Bihari Muslims. To be precise, as a few of you must have known, the Bihari Muslims, after India got its independence, many of them moved into Bangladesh. So when these people moved into Bangladesh, these were Urdu-speaking Muslims. So after the partition, they moved into Bangladesh. So when they moved into Bangladesh, what had happened is they were identified as part of the Urdu-speaking Muslims who were the majority in West Pakistan. And here when we speak of the present-day Bangladesh, it was then known as East Pakistan. So till the year 1971, these Bihari Muslims were also identified as the oppressor group, the people who oppressed on the Bangladeshis, the Bengali-speaking people, or Bangla-speaking people. So with the aftermath of the 1971 separation of Bangladesh from Pakistan, these Bihari Muslims were left in a lurch. So in that group, about 32 of them escaped. They crossed over into the Indian side. So when they crossed over into the Indian side, the Indians caught hold of them and asked them, "Where are you from?" These people said, "We are from Bangladesh. And we are Bihari Muslims." So India tried to push them back into Bangladesh. Bangladeshi government did not accept them because they were Urdu speaking. They said, no, they are all Bihari Muslims. They originally came from Bihar, so they have to get back into Bihar. But Indian government was not ready to accept. India said, no, these people are from Bangladesh, they are Urdu speaking. So finally it was decided that but these people said that they were Pakistanis, East Pakistanis. Then finally the Indians said that no, these people are East Pakistanis, they have to go back to Pakistan. And then they were transported to the borders of Rajasthan. And in Rajasthan, from Rajasthan, they were pushed into Pakistan. So the Pakistani Rangers caught them. And then when the Pakistani Rangers caught them, they asked them, "Where are you from?" They said, "We are Bihari Muslims. We were, after the independence of India, we moved into Bangladesh. And after the independence of Bangladesh, we want to get back into West Pakistan because we are Urdu-speaking people." Then the Bangladeshis were pushed back into India by the Pakistani Rangers because they said, "You are originally from Bihar. Then you became Bangladeshis. Now you want to become Pakistanis. No way that you are going to come in." And they were pushed back into India. Then again, the Indians said, "No, we cannot accept, you get back to Pakistan." So like that, it was like a throw ball or a volleyball match where these 32 people were being thrown from one side of the net to the other side. So finally, after some time, it so happened that for about 6 months, there was no news about them. Then after 6 months, the BSF, when they were patrolling through the Thar Desert, they found 32 skeletons of these people. Then it shook the conscience of many Indians. The question that was raised was, can a country which is so large enough, can it not afford to have 32 more people, was the question raised. because 32 lives matters. Not for you, not for me, but for humanity it matters, because they were fellow human beings. This is the kind of life a refugee leads. So here, that apart, India is not a country alien to the refugee problem. We have, right from the days of our ancient scriptures, we come across refugees, whether it is the Bible or the Mahabharata or the Ramayana. We come across stories of people seeking refuge in some part of the world, some part of our country or the other. So here, one of the very first group of refugees to have come into India was the Parsis, who came into Gujarat because of the persecution between the 12th and the 16th centuries because of the religion they practiced. They practiced Zoroastrianism. So they were pushed out. They landed in the coastal towns of Gujarat. Then they were taken to the king of Gujarat. The king then asked them this question: why should I allow you to enter my country? Then the leader of the Parsis said, get me a glass of milk, if you don't mind. A glass of milk was brought. Then he asked for a spoon of sugar. So when a spoon of sugar was brought, the leader of the Parsis put this spoon of sugar into the milk and stirred it. Then he said, can you identify where the sugar is? The ruler couldn't. But then at the same time, the ruler was requested to taste the milk. The milk was sweet. So when the milk was sweet, the Parsi leader said, this is the effect you're going to have if you allow us to come into your country. So this is how the Parsis, from the time they landed in India till now, they have become the most prosperous country. And in terms of business, they are the leading business group of India. Right from Godrej to the Tatas, we find that they have prospered and they have helped the industrialization of India. So in that sense, this is part of history. But then when we look at the Indian scenario post-independence, so the first, India was born with the crisis of refugees. 14.5 million people crossed over both the sides of our borders with the dawn of the independence on 14th and 15th of August. It's the same with Pakistan also. So 14.5 million people crossing over the borders is the highest in the history of the world. We have had even a refugee as our Prime Minister. Dr. Manmohan Singh is not, he was not born in India. He was born in Pakistan. One of the tallest leaders of the BJP, Atal Bihari, LK Advani, is from Sindh province of Pakistan. So in that sense, these are the people who have come here and enriched. If you go to Punjab and then most parts of North India, we come across, if you listen to the stories of people, they would narrate the stories of how many people crossed over from Pakistan into India, and it is the same with the Pakistan also. So India and Pakistan were born with the transport of refugees on either sides of the border. Then the second wave of refugees, when we look at India, was in 1959, when India received 80,000 Tibetans. So the Tibetans now number around 100,000, settled in different parts of India, and at Dharamshala they have their own settlement. Dharamshala is in Himachal Pradesh, where they have their own settlement, and in Karnataka they have a big place called as Bailukuppe, where the government of Karnataka in those days sanctioned about 3,000 acres of land, which is cultivated, and the Tibetans have made it as their home. The Indian government even extends the courtesy of allotting 2 medical seats to the Tibetan refugees. And Tibetan refugees are one of the very few refugee groups that can travel across the whole of India. The government of India gives them a travel card known as the Yellow Book. And if they have this Yellow Book, there is no restriction of travel for the Tibetan refugees, and unfortunately, this is not accorded to the other refugees. Then the next biggest wave of refugees into India was in 1971 when the Bangladeshi refugees came here. More than 10 million refugees, that is 1 crore refugees, came into India without any support from any country or the UNHCR. India took care of these refugees, created the country of Bangladesh, and then sent them back into Bangladesh. So apart from that, uh, if you look at the other major refugee groups that are present in the country, in India we have about 60,000 Chin refugees from Myanmar or former Burma, who are all Christians. So because they are Christians, they have been persecuted and they are sent in, they have sought refuge in India, especially in the state of Mizoram. Then another very important and big group of refugees is that of the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees, who first came into India in the year 1983. Around 232,000 Sri Lankan Tamils entered into the Indian borders, into the state of Tamil Nadu, and they lived here in the refugee camps for about 4 years till the year 1987, and then it was only in 1987 that they left the Indian shores. So before coming back to the Sri Lankan refugee problem, I would like to step into the Rohingya refugees. The Rohingyas you must have heard of this group because of late over the last 5 years. Even a person like Aung San Suu Kyi has been so heartless in dealing with this particular group of refugees, wherein it was in the beginning of this year that Myanmar had to face the International Criminal Court, and the person who represented Myanmar at the International Criminal Court was Aung San Suu Kyi. So here, the Rohingyas, which is formerly known as the Arakan state, so they have been facing persecution right from the independence of Myanmar, because these Rohingyas are Muslims. So these Rohingya Muslims have been tossed around Myanmar, and most of the time they have took refuge in Bangladesh. So in the year 1982, when the military junta of Myanmar took account of the nationalities that are present in Myanmar, they notified 135 national ethnic groups present in Myanmar. So they, in a very deliberate manner, deleted the Rohingyas as one of these 135 national ethnic groups, and they were excluded as nationals of Myanmar. So then after that, the oppression and the persecution against the Rohingyas started to a great extent, wherein lakhs and lakhs of refugees turned out to the borders of Bangladesh. So in those days, before the present crisis, there were about 25,000 Rohingya refugees in India. Post-genocide, the numbers have increased, and it is estimated that there are around 40,000 Rohingyas present, but then there are no legal statistics present here. UNHCR takes care of 16,500 Rohingyas in India. So the Bangladesh also closed down its border, but still it is said that since 2015, 723,000 Rohingyas fled into Bangladesh, and many of them entered into India. India doesn't accept these refugees because in the Indian Parliament itself, Kiran Rijiju, the Union Minister, stated that there are 40,000 Rohingyas who are living illegally. He did not use the word refugees. He said they are illegal migrants. Because when you speak of, when you use the term refugee, you have to give them asylum. The country has to take care of their needs. But if they are considered as illegal migrants, they can be pushed back to the place from where they came from. So, but the older lot of refugees who came into India pre-2015 are people who are settled in different parts of India, mostly North India. They are settled. The biggest number is seen in Jammu. Then you have these Rohingyas in Delhi, parts of Uttar Pradesh, parts of Rajasthan, as well as in South India. We can see these Rohingyas in Hyderabad. And most of them use Bengal as the entry point into India, and especially the Malda region is the region from where they enter into India. So, in that sense, India has not accepted them legally as refugees. So, then the other important group in India, as we had discussed a little ago, is the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees. I spoke about the first wave. They entered into India in the year 1983 for the first time, were here till 1987, and in 1987 the Indian peacekeeping force, which the Sri Lankans call as Indian people killing force, when they went into Sri Lanka in the year 1987, the refugees also followed, thinking that they could be resettled back in their country. But with the exit of the Indian peacekeeping force in the year 1990, the war once again erupted and they came back into India. So since then, we have seen different waves of Sri Lankan Tamil refugees coming into India. So here, when we speak of these refugees, these are the only camp refugees who are allowed to settle in camps, apart from the Tibetans. Tibetan camps are not like camps because Tibetans can construct their own houses because the land is given to them. They can do whatever they want in their settlements. Whereas here, with the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees, the story is completely different. They are settled in three types of camps. One is known as the godown camps, wherein dilapidated godowns used by the Food Corporation of India are given to them, where they make partitions, and the partition is 8 by 8. Every family is allotted 8 feet by 8 feet, in which they are supposed to have a partition made of polythene covers. So this cannot exceed 4 feet in height, because everything should be transparent, everything should be visible, and this is for what we call as the so-called security reasons. Then the next type of camp is known as the dam camps, wherein in the early 1950s, Tamil Nadu government constructed a number of dams across the state. So they also constructed shelters for the construction workers of these dams. So when the construction of the dams were completed, these construction shelters were dilapidated and the refugees who came in were settled there. Then apart from that, the third type of settlement is the cyclone shelters, which you find in the coastal districts of Tamil Nadu. So in the late 1970s, we had huge cyclones hitting the coast of Tamil Nadu. That is the time cyclone shelters were built, and these cyclone shelters were used as a place for settlement of the Sri Lankan Tamils. So these are the three types of spaces, physical spaces allotted, and these are extremely small. These are all temporary shelters measuring just about 8 by 8 feet, in which families have been living right from 1983 onwards, and from 1990, large numbers of them came and settled down here. When we speak, a total of 108 such refugee camps are present all across the state of Tamil Nadu. Apart from that, there are two special camps in the state of Tamil Nadu. When we speak of special camps, those people who are suspected to have militant links back in their country, if they were part of one of the other militant groups that fought for the liberation of the Tamils, and if they came into India as refugees, they are taken to a place called as a special camp, and they are housed there. So one of the special camp is known as the Pulal jail. So these special camps means they are not given any special treatment, but then these are jails. So these people are put in jails. So when we speak of refugees, in general, whether it is the Sri Lankan Tamils or the Chin refugees or the Afghan urban refugees or any group, The most important psychological issue we need to discuss is the issue of time and space. So when we speak of time and space, as an individual, I can spare my time to be with you from 4 o'clock to 4:40. But does the refugee have this kind of a time to think of being with you or think of spending the time with you is unimaginable, because a refugee's time is not determined by the refugee, but the time is defined and determined by other external forces, be it the government officials or anybody else, because the place where they stay is decided by the authorities. The time how a person has to, a refugee has to find, is decided by the authorities. In that sense, the space again, the mental space and the physical space is determined by external forces, not by the person himself or herself. So this issue of time and space is something that is extremely worrying and something which every refugee faces. The next important issue faced by a refugee is the question of identity. So as I told you in the beginning, people flee fearing persecution. But then when a person comes with an identity. For example, if you take the issue of Sri Lankan refugees, Sri Lanka is around the late 80s or early 90s in the UNDP ranking. India ranks between 132 to 134. It keeps jumping and competing with Pakistan and Bangladesh. So in that sense, the Sri Lankans come from a richer country into a poorer country. Back home, they have their own huge houses. The houses are quite large and with open spaces. So you're bringing in a person who comes from, who's habituated to living in a big place, a very open space, and confining the person to just 8 by 8 feet. So this creates a problem psychologically, and the person finds it extremely difficult to adjust to this kind of a new circumstance in an alien land. That apart, there the person enjoys his or her own identity. But when they come here and seek refuge in a different country, they are just known by their refugee card numbers. There are no names. People don't address people. People don't address the refugees as with using their name, but they are addressed using their refugee cards. So this issue of identity is again a very important issue. There's a lot to speak, but I have been given just half an hour to speak, so I'll just rush through. So that apart, when people live as refugees in camps, they face severe harassment from the officials. So officials, right from the revenue officials to the different educational authorities, they harass them. That apart, the police on the other hand always suspect these people of committing crimes known as the Q branch, and their only task is to monitor the Sri Lankan network. So sociologically speaking, as I told you, these people live in 8 by 8 feet, and then they have nothing to do. Most of them fled their country in pursuit of education. Here, they are not given free education after 12th standard. Till 12th standard, they can go to the government schools and get educated. After 12th, they have to pay for their education, and from where will they pay? Because there is a severe restriction of movement of these people. These people are not supposed to come out of their camps. But then a large number of them step out of their camps and take up menial jobs because they have to fulfill their day-to-day living. So, but then they are unable to cross the districts and go out to work. So when they cannot earn, how will they get educated? And the Sri Lankan Tamil community is a community which is known for its educational values, because when you go to the seashores of Rameshwaram and see these people landing, a large number of them would very safely bring their marks card with the hope that their children can continue with their education. But then educational opportunities are eroded after their 12th standard. Then when we speak of restriction of movement, they are unable to get out of their camps, and every time a VVIP visits, these people are locked down inside the camps for days together. Then when at the time of the flight itself from the country of origin to India, they have to face a severe naval blockade, wherein the Indian Navy is present in the deep ocean. And when they are successful enough to dodge the Sri Lankan Navy first, then the Indian Navy have to dodge the coast guards and then enter into India. And in between, there are 13 small islets between India and Sri Lanka. A large number of them have swam across from one islet to the other, and then when the boats in which they travel are meant to load just 4 fishermen. They are common fishermen's boats, but then instead of 4 people, 32 people are loaded into these boats. They pay a huge sum of money to get into these boats and come here. That apart, when they come here, they have to undergo 1 month's quarantine in the Mandapam refugee camp, wherein they would put in a huge hall. There would be policemen sitting from morning till evening, looking at the activities of the refugees in that quarantine hall, and these policemen would determine whether the person has militant links or not, whether the person is fit enough to get refuge in India or not. So in that sense, it is a policeman who decides whether a person is eligible to be a refugee or not in India. That apart, the refugee cannot decide on the camp in which he can live. It is the authorities who decide on which camp he has to go and where he has to live. Then apart from that, here when they come in large numbers, in the sense the family gets scattered. The father and mother will be in some camp, the children will be in another. So reintegrating and reuniting is a very big problem of these refugees. Then apart from that, another very important issue is the issue of chronic illness in the camps. Then the psychological issue of the haunting they have faced back in their country, and the haunting memories of their past lingers in their minds. And because the entire social system is degenerated, we can come across a number of teenage pregnancies in the camps. And more importantly, one thing that each and every person asks in any of the refugee camp, whether it is a Chin refugee or a Tibetan refugee or any refugee you come across, is what is my future? What am I doing here? When will I go back to my country? Because when you look at the Tibetans, they came here in 1959. They have been here for so many decades, but then for 6 decades they are here. They have not seen their motherland. It's the same story with the Afghans, the same story with the Somalis, the Sudanese, with the Sri Lankan Tamils, with the Chins. So in that sense, one of the most important lacunae faced in India by them is the access not being granted to the UNHCR. India doesn't grant access to the UNHCR into the camps because India is not a signatory to the 1951 UN Convention on Refugees, and India is not a signatory to the 1967 Protocol on Refugees. So with this, the UNHCR cannot monitor whether the refugees are enjoying their rights, because when a person enters into another country as a refugee, the person is supposed to enjoy what we call as refugee rights. But unfortunately, in India, the refugees do not enjoy the legal rights meant to be given to these refugees, because India, as I told you, is not a signatory to the convention nor the protocol, and Indian government decides who can be a refugee and who cannot be a refugee, because in the camps of Sri Lankan Tamil refugees, we have about 60,000 refugees who are recognized as refugees according to the Indian terms. But then another 40,000 Sri Lankan Tamils live outside the camps and they are not recognized as refugees. So it is the government which decides on an ad hoc basis who can be a refugee and who cannot be a refugee, though they may come under the same group. So India allows UNHCR to work with urban refugees in Delhi, but the same India doesn't allow the UNHCR to work with refugees on the borders of Mizoram, where Myanmar, where the Chinns come from Myanmar, or the Sri Lankan Tamils enter into India. So I think I roughly covered in a very fast pace the problems faced by refugees in a nutshell, and then I've taken more than 35 minutes. You're open for questions. I think we have a couple of minutes more. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, sorry for putting this pressure on you, but for the participants, something I forgot to tell you. Professor Paul Newman is one of the most experienced academicians of this country who frequents the meetings of the United Nations Human Rights Council. And it is very important because what is special about this is every time he educates a number of people who are not exposed to the system, accompanies them, prepares statements, allows them to give oral statements in the council, written statements in the council, guides them through, and allows them to see how the agenda is moving, etc. A teacher of the grassroots at Geneva as well, not only in the camps, but also in Geneva as well. Paul, now I think my friend will have some questions for you. So, Matthew, some questions?
Yes. Thank you, Henry. Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Hi, good evening. Just a few questions from participants. One of the participants wants to know with regard to the balance between the principle of non-refoulement and the economic burden of hosting refugees that is put on the state. So the participant asks, how do we balance these two with the interest of the state and of the refugees together?
When we speak of the interest of the refugees, the principle of non-refoulement has to be followed by any country. If you are part of the UN system, you have to adhere to the rules and regulations. Right to seek asylum is a right which is enjoyed by any refugee because India is a signatory to the UN Charter. That apart, when we speak of the economic burden, the government need not pay for them. So the government has to just allow them to work. So every refugee has a right to work. So when we speak of right to work, the refugee can earn his or her livelihood. In India, when we speak of the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees, the state government of Tamil Nadu gives them a dole of 1,000 rupees. And in the present times, 1,000 rupees is not sufficient to make a living. At the same time, these refugees seek menial jobs as painters, as construction workers, and there are certain areas like around Ranipet in the north of Tamil Nadu, there are a number of chemical factories. So where the Indians dread to go and work, it is these refugees who go there and work. Then in the firecracker industry of Sivakasi, a large number of refugees are employed. And these refugee camps are not within the city limits. Most of them are outside the city limits where there is a great dearth of labor. So this dearth of labor is fulfilled. I'm speaking of unorganized labor. So it's fulfilled by the refugee community. So in that sense, they are never a burden onto you. You allow them to work, they can earn their livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say 2-3 questions together so that it gives you flexibility to answer in the interest of time. One is, why hasn't India signed the UN Charter on refugees?
Matthew, hold on. Matthew, your voice is gone down. I don't understand why. Kindly come up to the mic.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, better.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The participant asked, why has India not signed the UN Charter on refugees? And other question is with regard to what are the criteria for admitting a refugee in a country? Like what are the criteria on which the state can determine a person as a refugee? And the last point here, asking for your comment with regard to Chakmas and Bru refugees.
Chakmas and Bru, okay.
And there's a personal message from a participant who happens to be a classmate. I sent it to you personally on the chat here.
Okay. Yeah. India is not a signatory to the UN convention or protocol because none of the South Asian countries are. So when you sign the UN convention or protocol, you have to follow the UN protocols, UN convention, and allow people. You can't have the CAA, and you can't say that we will have the freedom of allowing people whom we want and check out people whom we don't want. So when you are part of the UN system, when you are a signatory, you need to allow all those who fall under the 5 categories which I mentioned in the beginning. It also answers the second question, criteria for allowing refugees. So here, when we speak of the criteria should be race, religion, nationality, political opinion, membership of a particular social group. But when it comes to India, India decides it on a political basis. So they allow Sri Lankan Tamil refugees to come in. They allowed them in the 1980s because of political reasons. At that time, India was supporting Tamil militancy. It was also arming them and training them. In the same way, we allowed Tibetan refugees to come in. The Tibetan refugees are called as the white-collar refugees because they are given all the privileges to come in, because we wanted to use them as a tool against countering China. But then we are not very, very friendly with people coming in from Myanmar. But then when they penetrate into a country, there's no way of throwing them out because you are being monitored from around the globe. And then when it comes to Afghanistan, again it was politics, and then not many Afghans came in. More than 20 lakh Afghans were there in Pakistan. But then it was only a few thousands who came into India, and they came in as urban refugees. And the burden of taking care of these refugees is not on you. The burden fell on the UNHCR because the UNHCR was the one that was taking care of these refugees. So as I told you, India decides on admitting refugees on an ad hoc basis based on their whims and fancies. We don't have a particular set of guidelines to admit refugees into India. In the 90s, there was a move to have what was known as the SARC refugee law, but then that did not come up, though many other SARC countries wanted this. India was the one that was, again, a stumbling block to get this signed. And India doesn't want to be, as I told you, India doesn't want to be part of the UN Convention or the protocol because they say that it doesn't fulfill our needs. And we have not very clearly specified our needs. Our needs maybe, I presume that we need to have only refugees from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and that too, not the Muslims, but all the other groups seeking refuge. So this answers the first 2 questions. My opinion about the Chakmas and the Bru refugees. The Bru refugees have been recently, a large number of them have been settled in Tripura, about 35,000 of them. The Chakmas, again, it is because they belong to the Buddhist groups. They have been thrown out, and then in that sense, we need to be much more generous in admitting refugees, because refugees are people, what is that they want? They want to live a life of, they want to lead their life peacefully. They want to live a few more extra days, which I and you want to live. When I and you as educated people can go and settle down in US and Canada, just because we are educated, why not a person who's uneducated, who's persecuted, enter into my country and live? Because borders are all man-made, and we are these borders have been followed over the last 200 years. It was Napoleon who created borders for the first time, because only after that the borders were all sealed. Otherwise, borders have been porous. From where did we come? From where did our ancestors come and land? Everybody has been a refugee at some point of time or the other. I see 185 participants, including me. If you ask me from which place I came and settled in Bangalore, Bangalore was not my birthplace. I came from somewhere else and settled down in Bangalore. So like that, each one of you just look at your own selves. question your own conscience. When you question from where did I come, from where, if not you, your parents, your grandparents, from where did they come? They must have come from somewhere else and settled down. So what is the problem in allowing a person coming into my country and settling down? Because your people are going out and settling everywhere in the world. Indians are there in more than 100 countries. I have a Tamil, my Tamil brethren are there in more than 75 countries across the world. They were taken around to about 60 countries by the British to work. They are settled down there. So when they can do that, why not the Chakmas or the Blues? Why are we preventing them from coming in, or any other group from coming in? Because all that they want, as I told you, is to lead a normal life like you and me, and they want a secure future for their children, and all that they humbly request is to live for a few more extra days or extra months or extra years. Thank you.
And you have to unmute.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a wonderful finish. You have given us an assignment.
Thank you.
And the assignment is to go to the refugee camps, meet a refugee, and find out why they are on our soil. And then we will get the best answer from them. And most probably, when we get the answer from them, we might also have to put down our heads in shame. I think we need to talk to refugees to be able to understand why they are here. Some of them are here for 3 generations. Imagine 3 generations. And they are still in that same little camp in some part of Tamil Nadu or in Tiruchirappalli at the camp opposite the airport. So thank you very much. And I hope this assignment that you gave us and the powerful words that you put into us, I think that last ending was super. And I love these questions that come of balancing. We always like to balance. We are better than the judges doing the balancing act in court. Balance this versus that. Balance environment versus development. Here, balancing the principle of non-refoulement with our own situation of refugees. Done well. Thank you very much. Can't thank you enough on behalf of all the participants here. Our next speaker, Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu, is there as Deepak Nathan. So he's already here, so I want to welcome him a minute before I introduce him. Friends, our next speaker is Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu. He's attending the program from our own faculty, Mr. Deepak Nathan's house. So therefore, you see Deepak Nathan there. It is Prince Gajendra Babu who's there. I hope he is visible to all of you. If he can wave his hand, then everybody will know that it is Prince Gajendra Babu there. Allow me a minute to share my screen with his very brief bio, but very, very powerful bio. Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu, for those in Tamil Nadu who now see him on the screen, now you'll connect him with your TV programs. In all your TV programs, you would have seen him, definitely seen him. Prince Gajendra Babu is an education activist. Finally, an education activist. First day you saw a very powerful young lady of 84 years who also called herself an education activist. This is the next generation education activist. Involved in the campaign for establishment of, and follow me very carefully, fully state-funded common school system. I repeat, fully state-funded common school system. And I'm sure all of you are having a big laugh. How is this ever possible? And I'm sure you're going to ask him a lot of questions on that. He's also the General Secretary of the State Platform for Common School System in Tamil Nadu. He's also on a number of national coalitions which work for common school system. He's an expert on the national education policy, and that national education policy of 400 pages. With him, if you sit next to him in any of these conferences, he addresses conferences saying page number 121, page number 254, page number 300, and so on and so. And he must have addressed several hundreds of meetings and conferences. mobilizing public opinions against the same when the national education policy was being campaigned against in our state. Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu, we are very, very happy you're here with us. Thank you for coming. I know you don't like these kind of platforms. You are a true right education activist. I know you don't like these platforms. You came only because you know who we are. Thank you for breaking a principle for our sake. And I say it from within and on behalf of all these people. I want these 200 people, as organizers, we want these 200 people to follow you. They need to follow you. They need to speak your language. They need to derive energy from you, not only the knowledge of RTE, but energy from your system. Over to you, Mr. Gajendra Babu. I will not disturb you for 28 minutes, and then you will see my face on the screen, which means people are waiting with questions. And this is a group with a lot of academicians, so maybe a lot of questions will come to you because I emphasized state-funded common school system. We will see what people have to say. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Henry, for giving me this opportunity to speak with the selected activists who are in the forefront who are going to be in the forefront. Most of them may be students, some may be faculty.
இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் வால்யூம் பக்கத்துல வந்துட்டீங்கன்னா நல்லா இருக்கும் so that your full volume comes in. மாணவர்களே பாதிக்கு மேல மாணவர்களும் இருக்காங்க.
Oh, now it's audible. எனக்கு கேக்குது.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Deepak Naran, for all the assistance you are providing.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Hello.
Now you are able to hear me.
I was just saying you are thankful to Deepak Naran
for all. Surely. Yeah, he's thanking you for having this arrangement. I thank Ms. Deepak Naran for giving me this facility to address you. Now, as we talk about education, right to education, the human right perspective, I just recall Fidel Castro when he was in India to address the NAM conference. When India became the chairperson, the preceding year he was the chairperson and he was handing over the chairpersonship to the Indian Prime Minister. At that time he said, we have to stand in a silence for a minute for each and every one of the people who died out of hunger. If that is so, this conference will not start. So we will stand in silence for all those who died out of hunger. Now, I would like to say that let us at least for a few seconds remain silent before we start the session for all those who died due to the mismanagement of the lockdown. Those migrant laborers who walked from one state to another and who lost their lives, and several people are suffering. So all those innocent people who should have not lost their life, they are no more with us. So let us at least for a few seconds remain silent and then we will go into this education. Thank you. Now, when we talk about education, what we feel is that literacy is education. Actually, literacy is one part of education and literacy itself is not education. Because education was the learning process was there. As the evolution started, because of the learning process, we are here. We would have been some other animal or some other species. We evolved into a human species because of the learning process. So we can't say that human beings learn because they know to read and write. We understand that many people who are able to read and write, they cannot understand very simple things. What will a person with disability do? What will a person with social oppression do? Why a woman who is a district collector or who is a professor, who is a guide for so many students, she is not able to select her own partner, life partner. Somebody else are selecting for her. And do we not see all these as a violation of human rights? 70 years has passed. There was a big political marriage between Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi's family and Rajagopalachari's family. This intercaste marriage, did it wipe out the caste system? Why the caste system is prevailing? If we say we are educated, we say we are learned people. Learned people understand a person cannot be born as a low caste or a high caste. Is there any scientific understanding? But this system, this education system, did not allow us to understand what is equity, what is inclusiveness, and why people suffer, and why people are in different strata of the society, why there is graded inequality. See, you would see in Martin Luther King Jr. struggling for the rights of the people of African origin. The struggle of Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't something different from Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Because for Martin Luther King Jr., the African origin people being discriminated in America is not a God-given one. But for Baba Sahib in India, the caste, the graded inequality, the caste system is a God-given one. So whom will you challenge? So challenge for Baba Sahib is something that was great than the challenges that were faced in other parts of the world. So this education system in India, when we talk about the right to education, we should have seen the education itself must have worked to remove the inequality in the society, to remove all forms of discrimination in the society. But this education has helped in sustaining that inequality. Why this inequality is being sustained? Because the education system reflected the social inequality. If you are born in some oppressed community, you will not have access to bigger institutions or sophisticated institutions. Just because of reservation as a right, you have an access. That is a limited percentage, but population is something bigger. So all are not able to come into the system. And only one generation has come into that, even through that reservation. Now we talk about why there should be reservation. So whatever there is inequality in the society, that is sustained in the multi-graded school system, where there is less privilege, go to some kind of a school. When you have a better privilege, you go to one kind of school. And if you are highly sophisticated, highly influential, or highly affluent, you go to some other kind of schools. And what does the child know about this discrimination? How do the child, why are you victimizing the child? Because he is born in a poor family, you are giving one treatment. He is born in a rich family, you are giving another treatment. If you are born in one particular community, you are giving one treatment. What the child knows as a child, you look at the child right as a human right, child right for equitable access. When you talk about child's right to equitable access, you cannot have a multi-graded school system. That is why in many parts of the world, we have abolished the multi-graded system, and they follow a common school system based on neighborhood school, which is fully state funded. And due to globalization, that is neoliberalism, in some countries, there are certain private schools, but still most of the developed countries, there are only public funded schools which serve the society. In India, it was the 19th century, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, who was the first voice for the common school system. He was the one who said, Sudras and Adi Sudras, the women, the men, all should study together. He spoke about the equity. He spoke about equitable access to the children of all areas. The 19th century demand of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and Savitribai Phule could not be realized till date, even though there are constitutional provisions, even though there is an act for right to education, even though we say India is democratically very sound, it is a democratic nation, it is a welfare state, here we have a tax, what you call it as educational cess. I do not know why the government should collect the educational cess. You are not collecting cess for army, you are not collecting cess for maintaining the police, then why should you collect a cess for giving education? Education should have come from the tax contribution. But apart from the tax contribution, you have also put a cess, educational cess. And in spite of that educational cess, you are asking me to pay for my child. And according to the money that I pay for the child, you say education will be given. I feel this is really a right of the government to deny education. I don't call it as a right to education at all. In the Supreme Court, when the Right to Education Act was challenged, when it was discussed, the judgment read, they upheld the Right to Education Act, but they said in the judgment, original Article 45 and Article 21A are not one and the same, because the preposition for in 45 is absent in 21A. Just because there is no for in 21A, they said that it is not that only states should give education, anyone can give education. So now slowly what is happening is that education is being withdrawn, the state is withdrawing from education and the market access is being provided. Market is slowly taking over the education. If market takes over the education, then a child cannot claim education as a fundamental right, because every school cannot offer an equitable access to education. Equitable access to education for all children can be ensured only when there is a state-funded common school system based on the neighborhood school. And that education should also be in the mother tongue. Through the mother tongue, the child can learn any language, any number of language. It is not that he or she should not read or learn a particular language. He can learn Sanskrit, Hindi, French, English, any number of languages. But education, the learning process can happen only in a mother tongue, because a child has to deconstruct the knowledge. The deconstruction of knowledge can happen only through the mother tongue more effectively. You have to question. Unless you question, unless you challenge the system, you cannot have a new system. If you do not challenge the system, then when will you fight the inequality? When will you wipe out the discrimination? When will you call the state to provide you equitable access in every sphere of life? So in the human right perception, I feel education must play a vital role in creating an equitable atmosphere for my survival. Today, survival is a question. And when there is job loss, when there is no money with me, when I do not have sufficient food to eat, it is said that I lose my immunity. When I might lose my immunity, I cannot fight the virus. So economic concept is very important. Where will this knowledge come? This knowledge comes to every citizen only if he is provided a very strong school education, where he can able to learn the politics behind every word, every letter. It is not memorizing the letters. It is not memorizing the text and scoring marks. It is a learning process in the school. So if you want to allow the child to learn, then it cannot happen in a rigid atmosphere. in a market atmosphere where you talk only about a skill development, where you say the education must be outcome based, skill outcome based, what kind of skills a child should be having. This is not a right understanding of education in the human right perception. We say education in a human right perception, then education must inspire you to fight the discrimination, fight against the discrimination. Education must give you adequate knowledge to question the inequality. Education must empower you to question the state if the state does something wrong. That is democracy. Democracy is not accepting whatever the state says. Democracy is helping the state to be humane, helping the state to understand the issues, helping the policymakers to draft a policy that will be good for all the citizens of India and also the people living throughout India. Today, this novel coronavirus has said you cannot be a citizen of a particular nation alone and be safe. It has no borders at all. It crosses every border. So you have to live as an international community. So that means you should maintain friendly relations with all nations. You have to treat every person, every country as your brother and sister. And unless otherwise you have such kind of an attitude, then you cannot have a peaceful economical development, a peaceful social life, and a peaceful progress, either it is political or in whatever sphere it may be. For all these, you need a very strong school system, both primary as well as secondary. And this school system, if it is based on a common school system, community will have the ownership because it will be a neighborhood school. Children living in that area, whoever it may be, whatever may be the difficulty, whether it is a physical difficulty, mental difficulty, social difficulty, economic difficulty, whatever may be the difficulty, the child will be in the same school, in the general school. It will not go to any special school. And only in such a school, the people living in that area will own the school. They will say, this is my school. And whatever happens to the school, the community will take the responsibility. When everything happens to the student, the community will take the responsibility. That is how it happens any part of the world. In all the countries where you see a social development, a cultural development, you can see that the state-funded common school system. In India, we have not culturally developed. You can see the caste oppression even during the COVID lockdown. Even during the COVID lockdown, you are seeing a caste oppression. So what has our education done? So if you are marching towards education in a human right perception, to look education in the human right perception, then we need to demand a common school system based on neighborhood schools with mother tongue as a medium of education, through which you learn not only the letters, but also you try to understand the societal needs, the environmental needs, the resources, not only the human resources, the natural resources, whatever available in that area, that resources should be fully utilized for the local community. Before exporting that resource to any other country, that resource has to be for our own purpose. That is why we got independence. So now, is that happening today? Is that our resources are being used for ourselves? Is there manufacturing industries that is being coming up so that they can generate more job for the people? Without creating everything, now we are talking about some other thing, even giving up the public sector to the private players. So when we do not have a proper understanding of education, when we do not know what the learning process is, then how will you question, how will you defend this nation, how will you defend the resource of this nation, how will you help the next generation to enjoy the benefits of the hard-won freedom? So I think so, the right to education not speaking merely as a fundamental right or merely as a constitutional provision, merely as a provision of an egalitarian society. It's not like that. If you want to make an equitable society, if you want to end discrimination, then equitable access to education is a must. And that is why we say online courses are not an alternative to a regular course. Online, whether it is a course, whether it is anything in online, it can only be an addition. It cannot be an alternative. Because only in a physical classroom, you can deconstruct knowledge. You can discuss with your teacher. You can question your teacher. You can have a peer study, peer understanding, questioning within each other. So all these things cannot happen in online classes. You cannot feel a person. You cannot sense a person. You cannot understand what the inner feeling of a person in online. And the online access of bandwidth, see, where I am living, where my residence is there, I don't have a proper Wi-Fi connectivity. That is why I said that I should go to your office. Wherever your office is, I am ready to come. I don't have a proper laptop with a mobile instrument with a proper camera. So I don't have that accessibility. So when all people do not have accessibility, they do not have accessories, there is no connectivity, and the money that I have to spend, how many GB that will be offering me for the money that I am given. So online is not a right to education. And for school education, it cannot be an alternative form. It can only be in addition. So a common school system based on hybrid school is the only solution, and through establishment of common school system only, we can see education as a fundamental right in the human right perception. I think so. We can invite some questions. If it is only a narration, it will be too boring, and to let me understand what some of the listeners feel, and then I can even have something to say at the end.
Thank you. We will strictly follow your advice. I will try to give you 10 minutes of questions, and then 5 minutes for you to summarize also, or 3-4 minutes for you to summarize, because that will be good, because we need that from you. Matthew, questions?
Thank you. 2 questions at this moment. Why don't we have enough government schools and enough government schools across the country? Good government schools and enough government schools across the country. And the second question here is with regard to right to form associations and unions in schools or college. Many universities, colleges have restricted students from forming any association, whether linked or not linked with political parties. So participants would like to have your comments on these 4 points.
Can I go for these 2 questions?
Yes.
There will be more which will come. There will be more.
Sure. Yeah. Government school system has to be strengthened, and even as on date, learning happens only in a government school. The students are able to question freely, they are able to interact freely, they can demand as a right with the government, and they can get whatever they want. All these freedoms are available only in a government school. So when we talk about common school system, fully state funded, we mean the government school. But the government school, whichever government school you enter, it should have equitable access. When you provide equitable access, then that is known as common school system. So common school system is fully state funded. It's nothing but a government school system. But present government schools do not have equitable access in all the schools. That is why government itself, in some states, some corporations, municipal corporations, they have star schools or schools of excellence. When you say your own school categorized as one as a star school, other as an ordinary school, then is it not against the principles of right to equality? So we want the government to strengthen the government school system so that the people want that every government school in their neighborhood, a school in their neighborhood run by the government, is a real school and it is their school, and they should admit their child. Such kind of a facility should be created in every government school. Maybe that will be the first step in establishing a common school system. And with regard to the second question, it is absolutely necessary when you want to strengthen the democracy, the democratic practice, democratic exercise starts in electing your school pupil leader, your chairman of your student council, whether it is in the school, whether it is in a college, or whether in the university. When you do not conduct election for the school or college or a university, that means the country is not following the principles of democracy at all levels. It is not giving training, a proper training to the students who are going to be the leaders of the nation after they come out of the college or universities. They will be the people's representative. They need a atmosphere where they can participate in the discussion. So their democratic practice is that you question, other answers, other question, you answer, and there is a sync between the ideas, new ideas evolve. All this happens only when there is a council election, and many commissions have recommended that there should be an election, a democratic elected student body, and the democratically elected student body must participate in every sphere of functioning of the university or college or school. And that will be the right opportunity to represent various sections of the students and to address the needs of all sections of the students.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put two more questions to you, which have just come. Mr. Nitin Gadkari, in a recent statement, has said education is not charitable. What are the impacts and implications of such statements made by a senior minister in the government of India? And a participant would like to know with regard to the special provisions the Constitution has with regard to minority education, and if the right to education is also applicable to minority institutions.
Fine. A senior minister saying education cannot be a charitable is really a worrying statement. What is not expected from an elected representative of the people running the government, who has pledged allegiance to the Constitution of India, which makes provision for giving education as a right. Article 41 of the Constitution of India still says, as the economic capacity of the state develops, it is the duty of the state to provide education, and it shall be the right of the citizen. So it is very sorry that I do not know why the minister made such a statement, but the recent announcement by the finance minister, the talk about the new education policy, are closely related to what this honorable minister had stated, because there is a total sellout of education sector to the market forces. And they want to reduce the number of schools and reduce the number of colleges and universities. At the same time, they want to increase more and more online courses. And they want to show the more number of people. Gross enrollment ratio in higher education is increased. It has become twofold, threefold. They want to show that kind of a statistics. And for that, they are encouraging the online education. On one side, they are trying to reduce the government spending on education. Other side, they are allowing the private players. And simultaneously, they are encouraging the online courses. All these are connected to the market assault on education. The citizen of India have to be very careful in understanding the implications of the recent announcements by the finance minister and the national education policy, and it has to be defended. If it is not defended, then you will not have a non-discriminatory school system or college system in India. That will be a very great danger. And even in the human right perception, we have to see the right to education is a fundamental right that the state has a duty to provide. With regard to the minority rights, Constitution has protected the right of the minorities. And I do not see anything in conflict with the right of a minority and the right to education. There is a sync between two, because many of the minority institutions are already offering free education for sections of the people who are really socially depressed economically. So it is not that the minority institutions are not taking care of the society. But when it comes to certain administrative and other aspects, they want their culture and their independence to be protected. And the government must try to understand the limitations. The minority institution cannot wash their hands and go away, and they cannot say, I cannot provide access to every section of society. It's a duty of every minority institution to provide access to every sections of the society, whether it is caste oppression, whether it is marginalized communities, whether it is women, or whether it is transgenders, disabled people, the disability access in the entire campus. And all these things has to be taken care of even in a minority institution, and nothing is against the minority interest. So seeing the interest of minorities, securing the interest of minorities is something different. Talking about the right to education is something different. Both has to sync at some place. You cannot compartmentalize and see minority rights as against the right to education.
Matthew, one more question, Matthew.
Yeah, one last question. In our country, do we have a regulation with regard to private schools? Are there regulatory bodies or mediums which control the fees with regard to private education system? And do we have such good model outside India which we can refer to?
See, with regard to regulation of fee and other regulations, Tamil Nadu has a provision, a legal provision, where there is a committee to regulate the school fees, where there is a committee to regulate the college fees. They fix the fees for college and also for the school. In some other states, like the state of Maharashtra and few other states, you have certain laws that regulate the fee. Delhi government has also come out with certain legal provisions, but there is no uniform private school regulation with regard to fees and other things. But sorry state of affairs is that the education policy that has been mooted by the government now, what they call it is a national education policy, what they are trying to bring out, it removes the state control over the fixation of fees. It gives financial autonomy to the universities, self-finance schools, self-finance colleges. It gives administrative autonomy. It gives academic autonomy. So there is no possibility to control the fee of any private college if the policy, as it is found in the draft, is if it is implemented in a real sense. So we need state to take care of providing education. Education should not be given to the market. We cannot be at the mercy of the market to educate our children. The second question regarding the model for controlling the private fee, you should have seen in the recent election in United Kingdom. It became an election topic. It became a debate in the election, how to control the private schools. Only 7% of the population of United Kingdom go to the private self-finance school. 93% of the population of the United Kingdom go to a common school. But even that 7% people, what they feel is that the fee that is charged is too high. There is no control at all. So there is a discussion going on in many parts of the world against this. The best model is the state-funded school. That has been the model in Germany, France, or England, or United States, or in Finland, and many of the North European countries. In Finland, you don't even have a single school. The 9-year compulsory education, that single school, even a private school cannot charge a single penny. It is fully free. If you even if a private runs a school, he or she cannot collect any money. That is the best model. I think so. As far as the school education is concerned, the best model is to make it cost-free. The state should take the responsibility. You cannot have a private school and you cannot have control over it. Instead, allow the private to have their schools, whether it's minority, linguistic, religious, whatever it may be, fully funded by the state, so that student need not pay the fee. So the culture will be protected, the language will be protected, and also the right of the child will be protected. That should be the better model.
Thank you. Henry, over to you.
I don't think there can be a better note on which we will finish. Let all our schools follow the patterns that you suggested. Is the campaign that I think everyone here would like to join. Be with you, support you, because we would have found today that it is worth saying that all our children will be in state-funded schools, even if they are private schools. Imagine in India. Friends, all of you would be wondering whether this is ever possible. I want to start and end with a story of mine in relation to what state-funded institutions are. Around 5 years ago, I was on a mission. I was in Bhutan, and I had meetings the whole day. I had a dinner meeting which was following with the king, and right there I had a massive heart attack. I was to be rushed to the hospital, and I started putting my hands into my pocket looking for my card, saying I should look for a credit card. The friend who was sitting next to me, who was accompanying me, who was a doctor from Bhutan, but who had built that hospital, state-funded hospital, from money from India. So he said, Henry, don't worry. There are no hospitals in Bhutan which will accept your card, because all hospitals in Bhutan offer free services, but we offer the best services. So we are taking you to the hospital which offers you the best service, and that is a state-funded hospital. Friends, believe me, I had the best treatment. And if you want me to compare it to any of the biggest hospitals here, you can name it. I was in such a hospital with perhaps better care. All my nurses around me, most of the doctors around me were Indians. Don't forget they were Indians. They were from the state of Kerala. They were from Northeast, but not a single pie was charged. They were willing to rush me, fly me with an attendant to Kolkata for an angio if required. That is what state-fundedness is. I saw it with my own eyes. I experienced it with my own eyes. And the dedication and the quality of care that other patients around me were getting, because I was put to normalcy immediately. But for the others, I witnessed it myself. I imagine a day when your campaign, our campaign, not yours, our campaign for a state-funded common school system, which with neighborhood schools will become a reality. But you can be sure it is not going to be a reality with this government. And I think academicians, students alike will have to join you, strengthen you, hold your hands and say, we are all there to join your campaign. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving us
being with us. It was an opportunity for us, eye-opener for many of us. I was expecting lots of questions. All those who could perhaps question you have kept themselves quiet. I thought the lecturers here would say, we don't have unions for us. We don't join unions, whether they are in the universities or wherever they are. They don't join unions these days because the word union is a bad word. I thought they will ask you questions, but everybody, north, south, east, west. I'm not talking about Tamil Nadu alone. I'm talking about everybody. Open university, closed university, all the universities. You cannot speak today. You are what we call born dead. That is it. That is what you are, unfortunately. I know many of you want freedom, but that freedom will come when you and the migrant workers join together and struggle. That is when the freedom will come. Friends, while thanking sir, I want to also make a few announcements. Tomorrow, there is a circular a slide which is going to be shared with you, or has already been shared with you, for tomorrow's special lecture by Dr. Usha Ramanathan. Dr. Usha Ramanathan is a very, very special person. Everybody in the country knows her. And we managed to get her for you. Now, to speak on modern challenges to the concept of human rights. The very concept of human rights, what are the modern challenges, what are today's challenges? She's a wonderful person. I will leave you to realize who she is. But please share in all your groups. And Deepak, my dear, you also share in all your groups the tomorrow's special lecture, so that you can make sure that we have, it is Facebook Live, so people can watch it on Facebook Live. It is very important that people hear Usha Ramanathan. Morning, you are policing and human rights, but in the afternoon is Usha Ramanathan. Friends, the second point is, on the following day, 22nd, is the day when 19 people were killed in Tuticorin. Killed. Either only on the 22nd or for the incidents that happened immediately after the 22nd in the anti-Sterlite peaceful protest of the peoples of Thoothukudi. 2 years, no justice. 2 years, this CBI, which we got by fighting in court, is still to name a single police officer responsible for the killing. 2 years, Justice Aruna Jagadishan is peacefully conducting her inquiry, and at this pace she will continue for the next 2 years for sure. The National Human Rights Commission, the less said, the better, has closed the case, accepting the report placed by the government of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has to protest. To protest because this is impunity. To protest because we have to tell the rulers of the state, you are taking us away from our constitution. If we had a constitution and rule of law in this country, then we would have got answers by now. The fact that we don't have answers for 2 years of who was responsible for the killing shows there is a lot that you have to hide. Friends, on the 22nd, we are planning a massive public meeting. This time, online public meeting with all the leaders of the political parties, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Zoom. We hope at least 1 lakh people will follow this meeting that will be held day after tomorrow in the evening at 6 o'clock. Keep your evenings free. Day after tomorrow evening, keep your evening free. We will circulate it to you, circulate it wide within the state and outside the state. We all have to protest, and protesting means participating in such events. Human rights starts here. Human rights doesn't start after you get your certificate. More than the certificate is joining, knowing people like Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu, Deepak Nathan, and the others whom we introduced to you. We introduced them because they are very special people. They are the few people who live human rights through their lives. Friends, another announcement about your RTI questions. I was privileged to be in some of the groups. They welcomed me inside. And therefore, I came to know a few things that don't go the way we all thought it would go. First is that the question in the RTI in your exercise was only for the government of India. Everybody is pouncing on the government of Tamil Nadu. Wait, we will handle EPS, OPS later. We will handle the government of India because that question can be asked online. So your drafting of the question, friends, the drafting of the question is more important than anything else. So I know there are a lot of academicians who draft a number of questions. Those questions are different. These questions are different, my dears. So please carefully draft your questions, and tomorrow we will follow. I also wanted to Prince was talking about schools and fees, and I have a very famous school in my city, and I don't hesitate in naming it. It's run by the officers of the Central Excise and Customs Department. Wonderful. People who are in the Customs Department and Central Excise, who should be working for the government of India, are running a school. And they are the highly charged school in this town. I've had wonderful fights with them on implementation of RTE Act. My name, it runs through their nerves. They are now told their teachers in classrooms to go and collect fees from students, because otherwise this month's salary would not be paid. See the pathetic nature of our schools. A school that charges 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 2.5 lakhs, etc. is telling its teachers that they have to collect the fees from their students. Otherwise, they won't get their salaries. This is the sad state of affairs of a number of private institutions. which we sometimes fail to see. The last I wanted to also tell you, Mr. Vijay Kumar Vijayan, one of our candidates, one of our participants from the Puri district in Odisha, has not been able to come today because his area is to be under the zone where the cyclone is to hit in Odisha. We stand in solidarity with him and many others from Odisha and West Bengal who are in that zone, and also in solidarity with a number of people there whose lives are in danger today because of the cyclone that is approaching there. Very, very tough times for us at various levels, and therefore I wish you a good evening. Thank you for staying so long. Thank you once again, Mr. Prince Gajendra Babu. Thank you, my dear Deepak Nathan, who's in hiding there. We thank you and we love you for your, yes, there you are. Oh, you're only showing yourself, you're not showing your other half. Why don't you show your other half? Yes. These are families. These are families to be known. Families of activists. These are families of activists. So it's very nice to see her also there. Both of them are from the prestigious Loyola College, each doing different type of very, very useful things for the college. Thank you. And your college needs to know how you also build solidarity with people like Prince Gajendra Babu for this course. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Prince Gajendra Babu. Thank you. All the best and good evening, friends.